First contact. In the vast expanse of the Orion Arm, a sleek silver spacecraft drifted through the void. Its elegant lines and advanced technology, a testament to the highly developed civilization that built it. The Alacrin, a species that had long since mastered the art of interstellar travel, were conducting a routine survey of the sector when their sensors detected an anomaly. Captain Zorax, we've picked up an unidentified vessel approaching the outer reaches of our territory. The communications officer reported, her voice laced with concern. Zorax, a tall, lithe Alacrin with piercing blue eyes, strode over to the main view screen. Bring it up on the display. The screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that left the bridge crew stunned. The approaching ship was unlike anything they had ever seen, a bulky, angular construction that looked more like a relic from a bygone era than a modern spacecraft. Its hull was pitted and scarred, bearing the marks of countless cosmic incidents. What in the name of the celestial maker is that? Zorax muttered, his brow furrowed in confusion. The science officer, a young Alacrin named Tyrix, studied the readings on his console. It appears to be a vessel of primitive design, Captain. Our scans indicate no advanced propulsion systems or energy signatures. It's moving at a fraction of the speed of our ships. Zorax turned to the communications officer. Hail them on all frequencies. We need to identify this vessel and its intentions. The officer nodded, her slender fingers dancing across the console as she transmitted the standard greeting in all known languages. Minutes ticked by, the tension on the bridge mounting with each passing second. No response. Captain, the officer finally reported, her voice tinged with disappointment. Zorax leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Tyrix analyzed the ship's trajectory. Where did it come from? Tyrix inputted the data into his console, his eyes widening as the results flashed across the screen. Captain, the vessel originated from a remote, uncharted planet in a nearby system. There are no records of any sentient species in that region of space. A murmur of unease rippled through the bridge. The Alacrin had explored vast swaths of the galaxy, making contact with countless civilizations, but the idea of an unknown species emerging from an uncharted world was unheard of. Set a course to intercept that vessel, Zorax commanded, his voice steady despite the growing sense of trepidation. We need to know who they are and what they want. As the Alacrin ship accelerated towards the mysterious craft, Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to encounter something that would change the course of their civilization forever. Little did he know, the primitive vessel carried a species whose resilience and determination would soon be put to the ultimate test. The Alacrin ship closed in on the unknown vessel, its sleek form dwarfing the primitive craft. Zorax stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen as they drew alongside the battered hull. Up close, the ship looked even more antiquated, its surface pockmarked with the scars of countless cosmic incidents. Scan for life signs, Zorax ordered, his voice tense with anticipation. Tyrix studied his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. Captain, I'm detecting multiple life forms aboard the vessel. Their biosignatures are unlike anything in our databases. Zorax nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Prepare a boarding party. We need to make contact with these beings and assess their intentions. As the Alacrin crew readied themselves to board the primitive ship, they had no idea that they were about to come face to face with a species whose tenacity and ingenuity would challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. The monsters of Terra. As the Alacrin boarding party prepared to enter the primitive vessel, Tyrix delved into the ancient survey logs, hoping to uncover any information about the uncharted planet from which the ship had originated. His search led him to a series of entries dated back thousands of years, when the Alacrin were just beginning to explore the stars. The logs spoke of a remote world, known only as Terra, that had been deemed too dangerous for colonization. The planet was home to a variety of terrifying creatures, massive predators that roamed the land, sea, and air. The survey team had never encountered such a concentration of deadly beasts on a single world. Tyrix's heart raced as he read the descriptions of the monsters. Gargantuan reptiles with teeth the size of an alacran's arm, fur-covered mammalians with claws that could tear through metal, and winged horrors that could swoop down from the skies and carry off prey twice their size. The survey team had watched in horror as these creatures battled each other in a never-ending struggle for dominance. The logs also revealed that no sentient species had ever successfully colonized a world with such a profusion of deadly fauna. Any attempts to establish a foothold on these death worlds had ended in tragedy, with entire colonies wiped out by the savage beasts that called these planets home. Tyrix leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling from the implications of his discovery. If the primitive ship had indeed come from Terra, then its crew must have been forged in the crucible of constant danger. What kind of beings could survive, let alone thrive, in such a hostile environment? He brought his findings to Captain Zorax, who listened with growing unease. The captain had heard tales of these death worlds, but he had always dismissed them as the stuff of legend. Now, faced with the evidence of their existence, he couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. If these creatures are as dangerous as the logs suggest, Zorax said, his voice grave, then we must be prepared for anything. We have no idea what kind of beings we're about to encounter. The boarding party, armed with state-of-the-art weapons and protective gear, gathered at the airlock. They exchanged nervous glances as they waited for the command to enter the primitive vessel. Each of them knew that they were about to come face to face with a species that had survived the unimaginable. As the airlock hissed open, the Alacrans steeled themselves for whatever lay beyond. They had faced countless challenges in their journeys across the stars, but nothing could have prepared them for the shock of meeting the monsters of Terra. The boarding party stepped cautiously into the dimly lit corridor of the primitive ship, their weapons at the ready. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and metal, and the only sound was the gentle hum of the life support systems. As they made their way deeper into the vessel, they couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity of its design. Despite its apparent lack of advanced technology, the ship was a testament to the resourcefulness of its creators. Every inch of space was utilized, with narrow passageways and compact living quarters that spoke of a species accustomed to making do with limited resources. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, causing the Alacran to raise their weapons in alarm. But as the creature stepped into the light, they lowered their arms in shock. Before them stood a being unlike any they had ever seen, a bipedal creature with smooth, hairless skin and eyes that glinted with intelligence. It was smaller than the average Alacran, but there was a strength and purpose in its bearing that belied its size. The creature raised its hands in a gesture of peace and spoke in a language the Alacran's translation devices could not decipher. But there was no mistaking the intent behind its words. This was a species that had braved the horrors of a death world and emerged unbroken. As the Alacran and the creature stood face to face, each sizing up the other, they knew that this moment would change the course of their civilizations forever. The monsters of Terra had finally made contact with the wider universe, and nothing would ever be the same. Humanity's envoy. The Alacran boarding party stood motionless, their eyes fixed on the strange creature before them. The human, a female with short, dark hair and piercing green eyes, lowered her hand slowly, her gaze never wavering from the aliens. "My name is Captain Terra Nichols," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I come in peace on behalf of the United Earth Federation." The Alacran's translation devices struggled to make sense of her words, but the message was clear. This was a species that had achieved unity in the face of unimaginable adversity. Zorax stepped forward, his own hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I am Captain Zorax of the Alacran starship Velos. We mean you no harm." Terra nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I understand your caution, Captain Zorax. We are a long way from home, and our ship is not as advanced as yours. But we come with a message of goodwill and a desire to learn from the stars." The Alacran and the humans spent the next few hours in cautious conversation, each side taking the measure of the other. Despite the humans' lack of advanced technology, the Alacrin were impressed by their resourcefulness and adaptability. The human ship, though primitive by Alacrin standards, was a marvel of efficient design, with every system optimized for long-term survival in the void. As Terra and her crew shared their stories of life on Terra, the Alacrin's wonder only grew. The humans spoke of a world where danger lurked around every corner, where even the most innocuous-looking creature could be deadly. They told tales of great cities built in the heart of the wilderness, of vast underground complexes where humanity had taken refuge from the monsters that roamed the surface. But what struck the Alacrin most was the humans' unbreakable spirit. Despite the constant threat of death and destruction, they had never given up. They had adapted, innovated, and overcome, forging a civilization that could withstand the worst that their world had to offer. Zorax couldn't help but feel a sense of kinship with these brave explorers. The Alacrin, too, had faced their share of challenges in the vastness of space, but they had always had the advantage of superior technology and the support of a vast interstellar community. The humans had achieved so much with so little. As the two species continued to exchange knowledge and ideas, a bond began to form between them. The Alacrin offered to escort the human ship back to their home territory, where they could share their discovery with the rest of the galactic community. Terra gratefully accepted, knowing that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her people. But even as the ships set out on their journey, Zorax couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were just beginning. The humans were a wild card, a species forged in the crucible of constant danger. How would the rest of the galaxy react to their presence? And what secrets did Terra still hold? As the Alacrin ship and the human vessel traveled side by side through the void, Terra and Zorax spent long hours in conversation, learning from each other's experiences and philosophies. Terra spoke of humanity's dream of reaching the stars, of the sacrifices and setbacks they had endured in pursuit of that goal. Zorax, in turn, shared the history of the Alacrin and the wonders they had encountered in their journeys across the galaxy. Despite their differences, the two captains found common ground in their shared sense of curiosity and their commitment to peaceful exploration. They knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were determined to face whatever lay before them together. As they approached the heart of Alacrin territory, Zorax received a message from his superiors. The news of the humans' discovery had spread like wildfire, and the galactic community was in an uproar. Some saw the humans as a threat, a dangerous unknown that could upset the delicate balance of power. Others were eager to learn from this resourceful new species and welcome them into the fold. Zorax knew that the next few days would be critical. The humans would need to prove their worth to the galaxy, to show that they were more than just the product of a savage world. And he would need to use all his influence and diplomatic skill to ensure that they were given a fair hearing. As the ships dropped out of warp and the gleaming spires of the Alacrin homeworld came into view, Terra and her crew stood on the bridge of their vessel, their eyes wide with wonder. They had dreamed of this moment for generations, and now it was finally upon them. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The monsters of Terra had finally made their mark on the universe, and nothing would ever be the same. The Galactic Trial. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a sight to behold. Towering walls of shimmering crystal rose up to a vaulted ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in tiered rows, their faces a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes. At the center of the hall stood Captain Terra Nichols, her small human frame dwarfed by the grandeur of her surroundings. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation waited in nervous silence, their eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. Zorax stood at Terra's side, his presence a reassuring anchor in this strange new world. He had spent the last few days tirelessly advocating for the humans, using every ounce of his political capital to secure them a fair hearing. But now, as the council chair called the session to order, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon them. The fate of an entire species hung in the balance. The chair, A towering insectoid with compound eyes and shimmering wings fixed its gaze upon Tara. "Captain Nichols," it said, its voice a buzzing whisper that filled the hall. "You stand before this council as representatives of a previously unknown species, a species that by all accounts has no place among the civilized races of the galaxy." Tara stood tall, her voice steady as she replied, "With all due respect, Counselor, we may be new to the galactic stage, but we are far from uncivilized. My people have faced challenges that would break most species, and we have not only survived but thrived." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates, some nodding in approval, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The chair raised a spindly appendage for silence. "Be that as it may," it continued, "the fact remains that your species originated on a death world, a planet that has claimed the lives of countless settlers and explorers. How can we be sure that you will not bring that same chaos and destruction to the rest of the galaxy?" Tara took a deep breath, her mind racing as she searched for the right words. She knew that this moment would define the future of her people. "Counselors," she began, her voice ringing out across the hall, "it is true that our world is a harsh and unforgiving place. We have had to fight for every scrap of resources, every breath of air. But that struggle has made us strong. It has taught us the value of cooperation, of innovation, of never giving up, even in the face of impossible odds." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "We come to you not as conquerors or destroyers, but as explorers and dreamers. We have looked to the stars for generations, yearning to take our place among the wonders of the universe. And now, thanks to the generosity and trust of the Alakran, we finally have that chance." Tara looked around the hall, making eye contact with as many delegates as she could. "I ask you not to judge us by our origins, but by our actions. Give us a chance to prove ourselves, to show that we can be valuable allies and contributors to the galactic community. Let us learn from your wisdom and share our own hard-won knowledge in return." As she spoke, Tara could feel the atmosphere in the room shifting. Some delegates were nodding in agreement, their eyes shining with newfound respect. Even the chair seemed to be considering her words carefully. But there were still those who remained unconvinced. A delegate from a nearby system stood up, its voice dripping with contempt. "Pretty words," it sneered. "But how do we know that you won't turn on us the moment our guard is down? Your kind are nothing but savage brutes, barely a step above the monsters you claim to have tamed." Tara felt a flash of anger, but she pushed it down. She knew that rising to the bait would only confirm their worst fears about her people. Instead, she turned to face the delegate directly, her voice calm but firm. "I understand your concerns," she said, "but I ask you to consider this. On our world, we have learned to find common ground with creatures that could tear us limb from limb. We have built alliances with beings that our ancestors once considered mindless beasts, and in doing so, we have created a society that is stronger, more resilient, and more adaptable than any other in our history." She swept her gaze across the hall, her words ringing with conviction. "That is the spirit we bring to the galactic stage. Not fear, not aggression, but the courage to reach out to the unknown and find the best in ourselves and others. We may be small, and we may be few, but we have the heart of 1,000 worlds beating within us." As Tara fell silent, the hall erupted in a chorus of applause. Zorax felt a surge of pride as he watched the delegates rise to their feet, their voices raised in a thunderous ovation. The chair banged its gavel, calling for order. When the noise had died down, it fixed its gaze on Tara once again. "Captain Nichols," it said, its voice tinged with grudging respect, "your words have moved this council. We will deliberate on your request and render our decision in due course. But know that, whatever the outcome, you have earned the admiration and respect of all those present." As Tara and her crew made their way out of the hall, Zorax fell into step beside her. "You were magnificent," he said, his voice filled with awe. "I've never seen anything like it." Tara smiled, but there was a weariness in her eyes. "We still have a long way to go," she said. "But at least now that they're willing to give us a chance." Little did they know that their greatest challenge was yet to come. For even as the council deliberated, dark forces were gathering on the horizon, threatening to plunge the galaxy into chaos and war. The threat within. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Alarms blared throughout the Great Hall as delegates scrambled for cover, their screams of terror echoing off the crystal walls. In the center of the room, a group of heavily armed terrorists had taken control of the council chamber. They wore the insignia of the Purity Legion, a notorious extremist group that believed in the supremacy of pure species and the eradication of all others. At their head stood a towering figure clad in black armor, his face hidden behind a menacing helmet. "This council has betrayed the true purpose of the galactic community," he roared, his voice amplified by the hall's acoustics. "By allowing these filthy Deathworlders to pollute our ranks, you have sealed your own doom." Tara and her crew were huddled behind a row of overturned chairs, their hearts racing as they tried to make sense of the situation. Zorax crouched beside them, his face grim. "I never thought I'd see the day when the Purity Legion would dare to attack the Council directly," he whispered. "They must have been planning this for months." Tara's mind was racing. She knew that if the terrorists succeeded in taking control of the Council, it would spell disaster for her people and countless others across the galaxy. She turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "We have to stop them," she said. "We can't let them win." Her crew nodded, their faces set with the same fierce resolve. They might be outnumbered and outgunned, but they were not about to give up without a fight. Tara turned to Zorax, her voice low and urgent. "Can you get a message out to your people? We need backup, and fast." Zorax nodded, his fingers already flying over his communicator. "I'll do what I can, but it will take time for reinforcements to arrive. We'll have to hold them off until then." Tara took a deep breath, her mind racing as she tried to come up with a plan. She knew that the terrorists would be expecting resistance from the Council's security forces, but they would never suspect an attack from a small group of primitive Deathworlders. She turned to her crew, her voice steady and calm. "Here's what we're going to do," she said. "We'll split up into 2 teams. One will create a diversion, drawing the terrorists' attention away from the hostages. The other will sneak around behind them and take them out from the rear." Her crew nodded, their faces grim but determined. They knew that they were risking their lives, but they also knew that they had no choice. As they split up and moved into position, Tara felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She had faced death countless times on her homeworld, and she knew that this was no different. She would either succeed, or she would die trying. The next few minutes were a blur of chaos and violence. The diversion team, led by Tara's second-in-command, Lieutenant Malik, burst into the center of the hall, firing their weapons and shouting at the top of their lungs. The terrorists, caught off guard, whirled around to face the new threat, their attention momentarily diverted from the hostages. That was when Tara and her team made their move. They crept up behind the terrorists, their weapons at the ready, and opened fire. The terrorists, caught between 2 fronts, fought back with everything they had, but they were no match for the human speed and agility. Tara and her crew had spent their entire lives fighting monsters that could tear them limb from limb, and the terrorists were simply no match. Within minutes, the battle was over. The terrorists lay dead or dying on the floor, their weapons scattered around them. As the smoke cleared, Tara and her crew stood triumphant, their faces streaked with sweat and blood. The council delegates, many of whom had been cowering in fear only moments before, stared at them in awe and disbelief. Zorax, who had been coordinating the Alacran reinforcements, stepped forward, his eyes shining with pride and gratitude. "You have saved us all," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The Galactic Council owes you a debt that can never be repaid." Tara shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We were just doing what needed to be done," she said. "We may be primitive by your standards, but we know how to fight for what we believe in." As the council delegates crowded around them, offering their thanks and congratulations. Tara felt a sense of hope and purpose that she had never known before. She knew that there would be challenges ahead. The Purity Legion was still out there, and there would be other threats to the galactic peace. But she also knew that her people had a role to play in this new and wondrous universe. They had proven themselves today, not just as warriors, but as allies and friends. And she knew that, whatever the future might hold, they would face it together, side by side with the countless other species that called the galaxy home. A new era. In the aftermath of the attack on the Galactic Council, the name of Captain Tara Nichols and her crew spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The story of the primitive Deathworlders who had saved the Council from certain doom became the stuff of legend, told and retold in every corner of the universe. For Tara and her people, it was a bittersweet victory. They had proven their worth to the galactic community, but at a terrible cost. Many of her crew had been wounded in the battle, and some had given their lives to protect the innocent. But even as they mourned their losses, they knew that they had achieved something extraordinary. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was more than just a curiosity or a threat. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species with the courage and determination to stand up for what was right. In the days and weeks that followed, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of the humans' arrival. There were still those who harbored doubts and fears about the Deathworlders, but they were drowned out by the overwhelming support for Tara and her crew. In the end, the Council voted unanimously to grant humanity provisional membership in the galactic community. It was a historic moment, one that would be remembered for generations to come. As Tara stood before the Council, her head held high and her eyes shining with pride, she knew that this was only the beginning. Her people had taken their first steps into a larger universe, but there was still so much to learn and discover. She thought back to the long and difficult journey that had brought them to this moment. The countless challenges they had faced, the sacrifices they had made, the bonds of friendship and loyalty that had sustained them through it all. And she knew that, whatever the future might hold, they would face it together. Not just as humans, but as part of something greater, a community of species united by a common purpose and a shared dream. As the council session ended and the delegates began to disperse, Tara felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Zorax standing beside her, his eyes filled with warmth and respect. "You have done something remarkable today," he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "You have shown us all what it means to be truly civilized, not just in terms of technology or power, but in terms of compassion, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what is right." Tara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude and affection. "We couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You believed in us when no one else did. You gave us a chance to prove ourselves." Zorax shook his head, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You proved yourself long before you ever met us," he said. "You proved it every day on your homeworld, fighting against impossible odds and never giving up. That is the true measure of a species, and it is what will make you a valuable member of the galactic community." As they stood there, side by side, Tara felt a sense of hope and possibility that she had never known before. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, that the road to true acceptance and understanding would be long and difficult. But she also knew that they had taken the first step, and that there was no turning back now. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay. And as she looked out at the stars, shining brightly in the infinite expanse of space, she knew that their journey was only just beginning. There were endless wonders waiting to be discovered, countless new friends to be made, and a universe of possibilities stretching out before them. And with the courage and determination that had brought them this far, she knew that they would face whatever lay ahead with open hearts and open minds, ready to embrace the unknown and make their mark on the cosmos. For they were human, the monsters of Terra, the survivors and dreamers who had clawed their way up from the darkness to reach the stars. And nothing, not even the vastness of space itself, could stand in their way.